So welcome again to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I'm Bond Harper. I'm the current chair of CGIA, and CGIA is the California Geographic Information Association. And I know there's several of you here, perhaps not from California or from some of our other organizations in California. We are very thankful for the support of California ERISA and the California GIS Council. I know they shared this as well with their members, so some of their members may be on here as well. So welcome to you as well. So today's topic is the Certified GIS Professional Program, also referred by its acronym GISP. And so I'm pleased to introduce our speaker today, Bill Hodge. So Bill Hodge has been in the GIS industry since around 2000, I think I saw.
That was it.
Had his GISP since 2010, and then he was executive director of the GIS Certification Institute in 2013. So he served with them for a while, and now he's continuing to help out with them as needed. So welcome, Bill, and you can get started whenever you're ready.
All right, let's go for the screen share. We did this a moment ago with screen one.
And I forgot to mention, while Bill gets his screen going, if you have any questions while Bill is speaking, you should see a little Q&A panel on your screen somewhere. You might have to click a button to have it pop up. But if you want to type in your questions there while Bill is speaking or after he speaks, that way we'll have some time after the formal presentation to hopefully answer some of your specific questions.
Do we have a PowerPoint live?
I can see it. It looks good. Thank you, Bill.
Then at this point, normally I would say good morning, America and all the ships at sea, but it's not morning either here or there. And I think all the ships right now are docked on the West Coast. So, boys and girls and happy campers, it's a pleasure to be around. I'm Bill Hodge. I am the current executive director for GISCI. You were supposed to be listening to Candice Lubring, our newly appointed director, this morning. Unfortunately, Candice has experienced some recent family emergency problems, and she felt it was necessary for her to step down permanently. In that, because I've done this for 8 years, I'm now coming back in as the interim, and that's kind of strange. But if I can't give you an understanding of what's going on, then there's something critically wrong with my information. What we're going to be doing today is go through the introduction and the process you see on the screen. The red arrow is provided to give you an idea of when you can step away or when you go to sleep and you can go water your garden. It will scroll through the presentation at appropriate locations to give you an idea of how close we are to the bottom. To begin with, you need to know only a very small part of who I am. My location is there. It's in the heart of the Permian Basin, what used to be the fracking capital of the world, and I will not accept comments one way or the other. It's a fracking neutral conversation today, but I'm in the semi-arid portion bordering on drought based upon the Palmer Index. I have been around in the geospatial industry for 20 years, so I consider myself a 20-year-old bright-eyed professional. It may stand in arrears against my impression. Just think of me as a young whippersnapper. I am a non-academic geographer. Started out as a ranching kid in this area, and I am essentially home where I was raised. Family ranch is still in operation. I went to Tech, graduated with a chemistry degree and a math minor. Through the process of tech service and tech sales in the wilderness years crossing the country, I went to SMU with a master's in theology. When I stumbled across GIS in 2020, working with the USDA as a ranch conservation project, I fell in love with ArcMap 3.2a, which tells you where I intersected on the estuary curve, and the rest is history. Essentially, I came into the field with no background in geography or GIS. So I am the spitting image, the epitome of, if I can do this to reach some kind of professional capability, anyone can. And I suspect that I may be the only one on this call that does not have any formal training before I got to GIS. I became an expert estuary button pusher. I recognized that that was not enough to understand what the software was doing for me. It had its own ideas. It still does. In fact, any of the software today is infinitely smarter than I could ever be. So Penn State in an online certificate program gave me my start into the real leveling curve. I did some graduate work in their online program as well, moving forward. And they gave me the understanding I needed to become dangerous in GIS. And recognizing that I had no background in the industry, I needed street creds. And that's where the GISP came in for me. And it was an invaluable part of my life and career in giving me the opportunities. Now that I enjoyed it starting in 2010, let me give you an idea of who I represent as executive director for the past 8 years. The program, GISCI, originated in a discussion with ERISA back in the late 1990s. They had at least a 5-year discussion asking the question among themselves as to whether a professional certification in GIS was necessary, desirable, or possible. After a number of, and I really don't exaggerate, knockdown, drag-out discussions, they launched the GISP program based upon the portfolio. They looked seriously at putting an exam together at that point, but they recognized and made the final decision that GIS was simply too new as a profession. It needed 2 things in order to become more recognized, more stable before an exam could be put together. Those things happened roughly in 2006 when the University Consortium GIS group, UCGIS, which became one of our member organizations, put together the GISNT body of knowledge. Shortly after that, the Geotech Center, an NSF certificate or Center of Excellence advocating for the GIS curriculum at the community college level and above, they put the GTCM, the Geotechnical Competency Model, together, which enabled the government to start tracking some of the geospatial professions that we are a part of. Those 2 areas allow GIS to move forward with an exam, and we'll talk about that when it came to it. Before we get into what we are and offer, a 30,000-foot view is appropriate. Why certify? Certification comes in 2 forms, although that is an oversimplification from my part. Everyone is familiar with the licensing process. Surveyors, professional engineers, doctors, lawyers, they are required to have the competency measurement that they have, which is a true license. A certificate, and a professional certificate of the type we have, is at least 1 step below that. Ours is considered a voluntary. Certification is a process by which a person is measured against some standard, and that apply whatever the industry or profession, the base criteria is the same. You've got a standard set up. You look at someone in a snapshot for whatever those requirements are, and if they meet it, they get certified. The second question has become, since we've started in 2003, who certifies? There are a variety of reasons folks coming to the party. Some are like me, looking for the street credentials or some third-party recognition, and I simplistically, but easily from my understanding, think of us as the Betty Crocker Good Housekeeping seal of approval in the GIS competency level. You may be looking for a third-party validation to give your organization some indication of who you are. A professional may be looking to meet a job description. If an organization decides that they have put, and something we see on an increasing basis today, a certification is either a desired or a plus credential, and many of those are specifying the GISP along the way. So it may be that job description that you're trying to fill and lift yourself above the rest of the group coming in for that evaluation. You may be preparing to change industries, and we'll talk about some of the industries that have a value for or C value within the GISP. Those that recognize certifications generally are consulting firms far and away compared to the rest of the commercial world and those other organizations and segments of our industry. Government organizations are a slightly different breed. There are a number who do promote personal growth and development and reward individuals for some certifications, particularly the planning group. The AICP is one of those. You may see the PMP show up in those organizations. And there are a number of individuals who have the GISP. But in general, government organizations do not recognize their employees to the same extent that the commercial industry does. And many of the people that I see coming from a government background are doing this either for their own personal satisfaction or planning a career outside. And I have spent the majority of my GIS experience within the government sectors, from the federal on down to the local. So I've seen a little bit of this on a firsthand basis. If you're in academia, with some exceptions, you probably don't have much use for professional certifications because academia has their own internal evaluation process. Publications, degrees, everything that moves into that category. But we have seen more and more, I'll put it this way, an increasing number of faculty members and staff participants within the academic group are recognizing that the professional credentials have value outside. And if they're seeking a second life or a second career, many of them are pursuing that now to be ready for that move. I don't know where you fall into it. There may be some other reasons that I don't know about. But one final comment before we move into the specificity of our certification. Certifications are very much alike in that regardless of the profession and the type, they all start with an idea. And that idea gains traction. It is generally founded upon a technology that has wheels, which means that people recognize its capability to do something. And at the very end, you can make money with it. It develops and grows into an industry. And sooner or later, that industry becomes a profession, and it naturally leads to a certification because you and I, as the individuals that we are, have a tendency to look to our right and left. Is he really as good as I am? I think I'm better than that group over there. But at the end of the day, the certification is not designed to give us the credibility. It's designed to serve as a platform of protection for our end users, whether that's the individuals or the citizenry that benefit from this, whether it's the deliverables given to an RFP group, whoever's requested that from a consulting firm. The folks who use GIS are the ones who are meant to be protected by having the folks that do so operate from a level of competence. It is very unusual for certifications or for an organization that offers one to offer only one. Certifications are a lot like potato chips. It's very difficult to be satisfied with one, except for GIS-CI. At the moment, we only have the general GISP, and I use the term general advisedly. We'll talk more about what it covers in a moment. But it would not surprise me at all if sometime in the next decade, GIS-CI does not pursue additional specialized certifications, which could come from some of the areas on the screen or other specialties that we haven't really looked at or discussed. Now you have options. GIS-CI and our GISP is not the only game in town. If you are a GIS professional working in our industry, if you are involved in remote sensing or anything to do with photogrammetry, image processing, if that is the heart of your work, you want a certification from ASPRS. They offer 7. With them, image processing and remote sensing is the core. GIS is more of a periphery technology that allows them to do that. The GISP, by comparison, we have the GIS section as the core concentration, We have some questions on image processing, but in our GIS world and makeup, imagery is, I'll apologize for the term, but it's along for the ride. It isn't the core of what we do, and I will make no apology for doing so. There are two other areas that a person can move into. If you work for the government in the military industrial complex, or if you are into an intelligence gathering mode of any kind, Intel certification. If you work for the NGA, you will be required to have that certification to continue with work. USGIF is one of the nonprofit organizations similar to us. They offer that, and although it is one certification, it consists of a number of modules that you must complete. And GIS is a major part of what they do, but it's not the only part. ESRI is considered a technical certification as compared to professional certifications for the others. I consider ESRI to be a very important certification to pursue. If you are into the software, if you are siloed compared to the broad GIS world, an ESRI certification in the three main areas, desktop, enterprise, or development, will give you a tremendous leg up. And in each of those three areas, there are sub-certifications. So choose which might be of benefit to you based on those things that are driving you to move forward. Maybe you want several. And we have a number of the GISPs who have acquired several of those over their careers, and they're not finished yet. Our success is from two areas: the quantity and the number of GISPs as individuals that have come on board, but it's even more important for the direction that our member organizations have given us. I started with ERISA. They are the founding organization. And when they put the GISP together and did the pilot to prove the concept in 2003, they saw how successful it was with a small number of people and the feedback they received. And they recognized that this was too big to be housed within one organization. That's when GISCI was spun off as a nonprofit organization. ERISA first joined. The AAG, that I suspect you are very familiar with, was the second organization. They came in within a month of NISGIC. NISGIC has a specialty as the National States Geographic Information Consortium. They house the state representatives and the organizations from the government side, one of our more important constituencies. Shortly after that, the UCGIS came on board. They are the academic portion of the high-ranking institutions, and GITA is the Geographic Information and Technology Associations. Pipeline and infrastructure is where they fit. Point of order: when someone becomes a GISP, you do not belong to GISCI as a member. You may belong to one of our member organizations as a member, but essentially we are not an association like the AAG or ERISA or GITA. We are an institute, and someone is effectively renting or leasing the certification us for as long as they continue to meet the standards moving forward. We have three partners that are non-voting members that have been added over the years to augment the solidity that we have as an organization. So when someone asks, what gives GISCI the right to put a GISP certification together, we have the backing of some of the premier organizations that exist in the industry. From my standpoint, that's enough said. A quick history. We have, over the almost 15 years that we've been around now, certified over 10,000 individuals worldwide. We have been a world recognized certification from day one. We are expanding into that international market now. It's essentially doubled since we've added the exam. The key to the future and the popularity are those two bars that you see. The first one represents all GISPs from the time that we started to today. The majority of those individuals came in before the exam was, which meant the GISP in a portfolio only mode brought in 10,000 people over that period of time. The second bar starts in 2015 when we added the exam. The potential GISPs that have come on board, registered with the site, and are now looking to go through or have started the portfolio or have taken or in the process of taking the exam, they're double the total number of GISPs we had in that period, 3 times as long. And roughly, I see 200 new individuals per month signing on to the organization website to begin the process of looking around. So we're alive and well. Who certifies today? Coming in for the exam, it's, I would say, half of those come from the consulting firms, a third come from the government sector at all levels. Academia counts for 9%, and that's roughly triple what it was before the exam came through. And students are still a very small part of the picture because students, let me say this another way. The exam is written at a 4-year level, and the GISP requires 4 years of full-time experience in order to be approved. You can start the process anytime, but you can't complete it until you have finished the rest of that service. Now we come to some specifics. If you become a GISP, there are essentially 4 boxes that you will have checked by the time you finished. You will have signed an ethics statement, and you will meet the minimum of 4 years minimum geospatial experience. You will submit an online portfolio application, which is, in short order, a snapshot of your education experience, education, history, and your contributions to the industry. Contributions is our term for networking and professional giving back in that organization, and you will have passed the exam. When you meet those requirements, you're certified for a 3-year period. During that 3-year period, you are required to meet points for recertification. We don't call them CEUs, continuing education credits or units, as engineers or other organizations do, but the concept is the same. You have a minimum number of points that you must meet in the categories over the period of 3 years. You have a 1-year grace period in order to meet that if you have problems doing so. We encourage people as soon as they become a GISP to start working and to be cognizant first of what you need to do in order to recertify in 3 years, and to start meeting those on a regular basis instead of waiting at the last minute. We consider that part of what a professional management of your career should amount to. Fees. If you were to do everything up front in a short period of time, the portfolio, the exam, qualifying for both, you would pay $450, which takes you into the certification for your first year. After that, you will pay an annual maintenance fee of $95 per year as long as you hold your certification. We talk about a recertification fee of paying either $95 a year or $285. Actually, the recertification is free, and all you're doing is continuing to pay the $95 per year if you decide to recertify and continue to meet the process. From the exam creation to get, remember early on I told you that we did not believe an exam could be put together until certain things in the industry coalesced and materialized. In 2012, the board started asking the question, is it time for us to do so? Can we put an exam together now compared to our earlier history? And if we did, what would it look like? The board hired a project manager for exam development, and she remains in that position today. We selected originally 44 KSAs, and we started our first exam in 2015. If you put a certification exam together, you take on the task of keeping the exam updated and refreshed so that it is relevant to the group that you're certifying over that period of time. Our blueprint, the highfalutin psychometric term for exam description, was put together in 2015, and we had our inaugural exam launched in the fall of 2015. In late 2018, we went back and looked at the KSAs, those knowledge areas that we covered. We decided it was necessary to revamp those, and we came up with a new blueprint in 2019. The current exam, if you were to take it for the summer or anytime in the next couple of years, will be based upon that 2019 exam. We offer the exam twice a year. Those are the only two times you have the ability to take it, in June and December, and we've settled on the first Saturday of each month, running it over a week's period. The exam can be taken anytime in your career. There are no prerequisites. Vaughn, let me pause for a moment. How are we doing on time? You have a problem?
You are good. Keep on going.
No, I'll keep running until you tell me to shut up. Even as a student, whether or not you can meet the requirements for the portfolio, or even if you do not have the experience level, you could take the exam anytime you choose. Once you enter into an officially approved position with either a portfolio or the exam, the clock starts ticking. And once you have either passed the exam first, or if you chose to submit your portfolio and it got approved first, you then have a 6-year window to complete the other portion to acquire your GISP. If you do not complete it in that 6 years, you'll come back in and start over. The only really bad thing about that, the portfolio update is not that big deal. That's not a problem. But if you pass the exam and you have to wait 6 years and you haven't gone through it and you're going to take the exam again, I would not recommend that. To put the exam together, we went to the group felt had the greatest ability to define the knowledge areas we needed, and those were the existing GISPs. So it is a true statement that the GISP exam was written for the GISP community by the GISPs that were already present. Through a job analysis, through a number of DACMs, focus groups, surveys, face-to-face meetings in the industry among those GISPs, from a good cross-section of the demographic of the community that we had served and had put together over that year. And the year we started, there were 7,000 active GISPs that, from the pool, we with. The GIS&T body of knowledge was the foundation. It's the data, the full extent of the platform of GIS knowledge. And if you're familiar with it or have looked at it, there are currently over 450 knowledge areas, knowledge units, skills, abilities, subsections. In short, looking at the GISPs and asking them what GIS skills they use more frequently and regularly, we were able to pare that group down to the 10%, essentially the 45 KSAs that we use and test against today. This is a comparison of the GIS&T body of knowledge. There are 12 units, each one subdivided into a number of topics to give you that 400 plus. This is the exam blueprint. We settled on these 10 content areas. Each of those content areas are further subdivided into specific KSAs, and I won't go through these to a very great extent except to make a comment back at the top. The percentage you see in each is the weight percent contribution for that knowledge area against the exam. Let's translate that. The exam consists of 100 questions that are scored, from which you will get your grade. You have to make a 73 or above to pass. Of those 100 questions, the percent contribution from each section is weighted at, and you can see that some of these are twice as important as others. But if you look at the summary, data and data analysis, storage, integration, rearrangement, that's the heart of GIS, and it's the heart of the exam that we put together. The advantages, it was apparent overnight, which shocked me. I was prepared for the GISP to be accepted over a few years because it was a major addition to something that had existed as a portfolio only for a while. I was rather shocked, but in hindsight, I'm just a dumb guy, so what do I know? It shouldn't have happened. The industry, the organizations that hire, recognized that this exam constituted a true measurable component to give a higher degree of certification or satisfaction in their mind that a person possessed the competency and the skill level they were looking for. So as successful as the portfolio was to begin with, and because it was successful and gave us the group that have made the GISP the successful certification it has been since we've started, we determined that the exam was a reasonable addition to the process and the portfolio did not need to be pushed away or created or uncreated in that capacity. And the industry has responded very well. It now gives us, we have our own street creds because of the exam that we did not have before. How to prepare for an exam. We're getting close to the finish here. For the home stretch. Here's the first thing that I would offer to you. Your goal should not, N-O-T, be, how can I pass the exam? That's not your goal. The exam is not the key. The exam is a symptom of your ability to show the knowledge that you have in the 10 content areas we talked about before. There are a number of exams and a number of certifications where you can test your way to competency. And many people have experienced that and want to experience it in our certification. They've had the opportunity in the past to take a number of practice exams. They've memorized enough terms so when they get to the exam itself, and you may have done this through school instead of actually learning something, you can now go through the test and you've shown yourself to be a whiz. Unfortunately, that doesn't work for what we've done and the concept that we've moved here. Your goal should be to know the 10 content areas in GIS against which we test. And when you know those at a minimal level, you will perform very well on the exam. We have an official practice exam that you can move forward to. We added it in September, and we've been moving forward to this. We put in a practice exam several years ago. It was not directly connected to the exam. It did not provide, unfortunately, a good standard or a good measure of exam readiness as we had hoped that it might do. So we had to produce the official practice exam, which meant we had to have questions that were official, scored over the last 5 years that we could remove from the official exam. That official practice exam was created in September. It is a 50-item, a light version of the 100 question exam. It's available 24/7 from our exam provider. It's online, immediately accessible for a fee of $30. You have 2 opportunities to take it. Here's what I would advise, and let me go back one slide. If you want to prepare to become a GISP and to get ready to know the areas so that you can pass the exam, The first thing you need to do is go back to the blueprint that I showed you a moment ago. We have a downloadable form on the website, 2-page PDF. Look over that knowledge, put it into 2 categories, figure out what you know versus what you don't know. And then you take the bucket of what you don't know or what you're unfamiliar with or your weaker areas by your own self-assessment, and you start to look at those and figure out how you're going to work them. But once you have those 2 areas, then you come to the practice exam. Take it cold. Run through it in an hour. You're going to come up at the end of that with an overall score. They're going to tell you immediately what you made in a 100% comparison. You will get a performance report showing you in those same 10 content areas. And by the way, the practice exam is set up against the same criteria as the real exam in terms of the blueprint and the weight percentages. So your grade is a fairly reasonable, I'm going to use this term very carefully. They'll tell me, Hodge, don't say it, don't say it. It's a reasonable prediction of how you're going to do, except for this wild card. You have the ability to change that score substantially upward by concentrating on those weak areas that you self-identified and that the practice exam helps you identify, so that if you didn't do well on that practice exam to begin with, you can change your fate by studying enough so that you can pass the exam when you come through. But you better have 2 or 3 months ahead of you to do so. The less you know, the bigger your gap is, the more time it's going to take you to move up to the exam ready in that regard. If you've passed the official practice exam, wonderful. Don't rest on your laurels. It is not a guarantee that you're going to pass the real exam. It is very difficult to take 50 items, do that one time, and give you a guaranteed prediction, which we're not doing. And if you try to use it as that guaranteed predictor of performance, you will fall on your face. The exam is robust, rigorous. It has a passing rate of 60% so far for first timers. Essentially, those who do the best on the exam are those that have a bachelor's, at least, with a concentration in GIS. We have at least half of those coming into the exam that have a master's beyond that and have a focus in GIS. When you have a greater degree concentration in GIS, which means the more courses you've taken in a short period of time and retain, remember that use it or lose it phenomenon that's really bad about Esri in our world. The more you know and have taken from your classwork, the more you have used a broad sandbox experience with whatever your job experience is, whether it's with a consulting firm, government firm, whatever. Those give you the best chance, along with some study, naturally, those give you the best chance of passing. When any of those 3 areas start to drop, if you turn around and in your rearview mirror, your degree is farther and farther away, that means that you may have to work a little harder than some others to return to that level of skill that you had a moment ago. But there are a lot of people who make it, so it can be done. We're at the end. What happens from this point on, GISCI will be updating the exam and refreshing our blueprint every 3 to 4 years. We did it in 2019, so we'll start probably in late 2022 and be ready at least by 2023 to look at the next upgrade. Specializations, we talked about that as a possibility. We have an increasingly larger component from an international capability, but we have not touched at all the possibility for those international participants coming through. Some of the obstacles we have to overcome are simply knowledge outside of the United States and Canada, which is still where the majority of our growth and certificates come. Translation into other languages. Translation is always a very difficult area when you get into the technical specialization in GIS. Those translations become even more difficult. We've got 5 member organizations and the 3 partners. It's probably appropriate for us to look for additional member organizations. that's one of the things that the board will be looking at in the future. We have a capability to assist students, even though they can't get a GISP. But one of our partners, the USGS, has a summer intern program for GIS folks. This is one of the intern programs that they use, but they have chosen to make us the gateway for this particular intern group, which means, in short, if you're a student, if you want a position with USGS, if you want to be considered for a position with USGS, you come to GISCI, you recognize that this is a certification that you might want to pursue. You registered on the site, you started filling out your portfolio. You do not have to take the exam, but you may want to. Whenever you have registered with us and have shown that you have started with some reasonable intent to complete the GISP at some point in your career, we send an email to you in early September saying USGS has a program where those students who have started with GISCI have an opportunity to be considered for advanced placement or advanced consideration for the summer of the following year. In September, if those individuals email me back and say they want in early October, I will put a list together of those students that have opted in and are part of the program and send that to USGS, and then they will look them over. They will take the students that they find to be the most attractive, send them an invitation specifically to apply for one of the summer positions coming up.
So, Bill, I'm just going to cut in because we've
That's
got several questions. So whatever.
Perfectly fit. Thank you.
You don't have to stop immediately if you have any other closing remarks. I was just
that is the end right there.
All right. Well, perfect. The first question is if you would be willing to share these slides.
They're yours. There's nothing
right.
here that is proprietary.
All right. So the answer to Matt's question is a yes. And then Andrew asked regarding fees, are they one-time fees, or if any part of the application gets rejected or failed, is a new fee required, or does that same fee cover retakes and resubmission?
Reasonable question. I'm sorry that I wasn't specific. Here's what happens with, let me divide that into portfolio and exam. In the exam, the first time you take it, you will pay an application fee. That is a one-time fee of $100. You will not pay that again. The exam fee is $200. So for the first exam, assuming you've been here in the United States, you'll pay $350. If you were testing internationally, there's an extra $50 that gets added to that. If you fail, heaven forbid, you can come in and retake the test as many times as you need to pass. Two caveats. You're going to be paying only the exam fee. The application fee for the exam is not repeated. If you take the exam in two back-to-back periods, for example, you took it this summer in June and failed, took it in December and failed, you will sit out for one exam session. Then you will be eligible to come back in and start and pick up on two more back-to-back sessions. If you take it more than 3 times, we believe memory retention may be a significant part of your grade, and that's not fair. We want to test to know that you know what's going on. We change the questions after it's a new set for each exam period, but you might see a duplicate here and there from 2, and you might see it certainly for 3 coming back through. Portfolio. You put together your portfolio, and if I have any questions on anything you've submitted, you and I will talk enough I will pull you across the finish line or guide you gently as necessary. There will be no extra charge for accomplishing that. I hope that part makes sense.
Excellent.
And
Thank you.
for asking.
The next, this one, there's a comment from Warren. Awesome info, thank you. And I think this question's more for Norman if we're going to share a recording. We generally do. The answer is yes, Norman, right?
That's correct. I can make the recording available on the CGIA website.
Right.
More power to you. Thank you.
And then a question from Matt. For us non-academic GIS professionals, is there a recommended GIS textbook we can brush up on our knowledge?
No. One of the things we did to begin with, we recognized that there are a wealth of books, publications, online sources that cover the GIS world. We are not a teaching organization. We have covered the breadth of those in using them as references for our writing questions, and they've got to be written in a very specific way. We leave the training and the specific material to the GIS professionals for herself or himself, because there are hundreds of books that will cover the material adequately. We are not in a position to recommend one over another.
Well, thank you. The next question is, if someone has a master's or a lot of experience, why does one still need the exam? And then the second part of that is, to get the certification, one needs the experience, but to get the experience, you often need some professional certification, which is something I hear a lot, especially from young folks. So it becomes very circular.
Let me answer two questions in a way. Why do you need the exam? Because that's the standard we've set up for it. GISCI determined that the portfolio, to begin with, did a wonderful job of determining the professional capability of an individual, but the portfolio itself left some degree of subjectivity on the line. A person could theoretically work in an entry-level job for 10 years and meet the requirements of the GISP under the portfolio only, which defeats the purpose of having the GISP as a high-end indication of competence and success. The exam was meant to bookend that capability so that the combination of the portfolio and the exam solidified that an individual knew their stuff. I will testify after looking at every application that comes into the GISP, every individual who has signed up for the exam, every exam result that goes out the door. When you pass this exam, you know your stuff. And the folks who are the GISPs coming in off this will make the rest of us look brilliant over the course of the future, simply because of what the exam brings to the party. The comment: in order to get experience, you have to get certified. I will disagree flatly with that statement. A certification is the proof of experience. Certification is not the experience itself. You have to get the experience first before you can get certified. If it's a valid certification that's doing what I consider that it should be doing, and I will stand up and say loudly, the GISP is doing exactly what it should be doing, because we require that minimum of 4-year level before you can get approved for the GISP. Or maybe I didn't understand the second part of the question.
I think that's a good description. Then there's a question from Timothy. Is it too late to get into the USGS internship for this coming summer?
No, for this summer in 2021, yes, that's closed. USGS starts looking at that in the fourth quarter of the previous year. They make their determinations early in the first quarter of this year. The next one will open up in September. I'll be sending an email for the 2022 section. This one takes a lot of planning.
Yeah. This one's just a general comment regarding expanding overseas. Please make more payment options for overseas payment. There's a question from Amy. Are there remote testing options due to COVID restrictions?
No. One of the things, we've looked very carefully at that, and you may find that a number of certifications are going to what is called a browser-based exam delivery. We have taken a very close look at that, and we're not at all convinced that that is the secure platform we need to be using. I'll put it in succinct terms. Anyone smart enough to pass the GISP exam is smart enough to cheat in a browser-based operation in the security. And if anyone were to release the results of our exam, because we are a relatively small exam taker compared to others in the world, it would be devastating to our item bank. Give you a quick comparison. Our exam delivery provider, PSI, delivers 20 million exams annually. We're into the thousands area. PSI is a valued supplier for us. We are small potatoes in their world. Short answer, no. We're sorry. We can't move it.
Thank you for that. And that was a good question because I see someone else also posted the same one. So I'm glad that one got asked and answered because it looks like other people were wondering as well. This next question from David, are all of the questions on the exam software agnostic? For example, where will there be no Esri specific question?
We bill the exam as software agnostic. We do not ask you which button to push. We want to know that you know why you're doing something regardless of the software package you are using. So no, it is not specific to any software, Esri included. All of the questions, add a comment on top of that, are all multiple choice or multiple response, which is either choose the best answer, 1 out of the 4, or choose as many as are appropriate out of the 4. You will find some graphics that are added so that you will be asked to refer to that graphic as a part of the question and answering it appropriately. But you are not required to produce anything on your own. The only time you might want to use a calculator if you are ever asked to translate a scale. But calculators are provided on the computer platform that PSI provides. You will bring nothing into the exam except you. No scratch paper, no nothing. You against the world.
Excellent. And I think that also answers the next question, which was regarding multiple answer questions. Would a question have multiple answers with the ability to select more than one answer, which is what you just covered. So
the majority are single, choose the best answer, but we have a substantial number of choose all that apply. Now, one comment. I have repeatedly said that there are 100 scored questions. There are 80 additional pretest items that are included. So in the 4 hours for the exam, you will be answering 180 questions. You will not know a scored item from a pretest item, and we use pretest items in a real world environment to evaluate them in a statistically acceptable fashion so that pretest items that are seen on the exam now will become scored items down the road, assuming they pass muster. So thank you for your guinea pig abilities as you move forward.
Excellent. And I think that was most of the questions. There might be some more. If people have other questions, since we're running short on time now, what's the best way for them to get those questions answered?
You can send them directly. Stump the executive director, or you can call me.
And is there a GISCI? Is there a contact through the website, or what's the best contact?
On the website, yes, you can get to me at just a moment. Let me go one more page here. Oh, sorry. There we go.
There we go.
Sorry, I missed it.
That's okay. I cut you off before you got there. So yes, if anyone has any other questions.
I was really trying to hide. I wasn't going to let anybody contact me.
Oh no, I
gotta come out. Doggone it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Bill. Norman, if you could please make me presenter briefly. We have just a couple slides CGIA side to show.
It's been a pleasure from my standpoint. I enjoy doing this. And
yeah,
thanks to everyone who has an interest and showed up today.
Greatly appreciative. I hope this helped answer some folks' questions. So just quickly, I wanted to go over, at the beginning I mentioned this, but I wanted to show this since it has the actual path you would go to. So the CGIA awards are accepting nominations. There are big dollar bills there for the student awards because, as I mentioned earlier, the first place undergraduate and graduate student awards come with $1,000 scholarship. Maybe you could use that to help pay for your GISP different things that you need to pay for, certainly an option. And then $500 for the runner-up, both graduate and undergraduate student awards. And then we have other award categories for those of you who are professionals in the industry. And as we mentioned at the beginning, you can use, if you actually get the award, that does count as one of the categories for GISP points for your recertification. And so here's all the various ways if you want to get in touch with CGIA. I know we have a mix of members and non-members, so if you have any questions for us, here's our contact information. And if you're not a member but want to kind of keep up with what we're doing, see if maybe this is something you're interested in, follow us on social media. We post these events that we do, which are usually open to everyone. And we share these with our other organizations here in California, California ERISA, and California GIS Council. So those are good places to find out. So with that, thank you to all of you who attended. Thank you so much, Bill, for taking the time to prepare this very detailed presentation. We got some thank yous in the Q&A and other places. So folks, I think appreciate this overview that you've given them. With that,
Don't
we
forget
will
to have fun out there and be safe.
All right. With that, we'll conclude the webinar. Thanks again, Bill, and thank you to everyone, and have an excellent day.
Bye.